staring at the ceiling, laid in the misery bed. The rain is falling, the pain is peeling, laid in the misery bed. Lord, who put me in the misery bed? Oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed? What did I do? What God said? Oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed? The pillows, the razor, the mattress on fire, laid in the misery bed. Thrashed like a bug, impaled on the wire, laid in the misery bed. Lord, who put me in the misery bed? Oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed? What did I do? What God said? Nasty flu, laid in the misery bed. Might take me and might take you, laid in the misery bed. Gobbles up your ears, then ask for more, laid in the misery bed. You sweat and worry about his knock at the door, laid in the misery bed. Oh Lord, put me in the misery bed. What did I do? What God said? Oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed? Oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed? Oh I was walking down lonely streets, checking out the empty storefronts, when this woman walked up to me. She said, it's heaven or it's hell, and what's the difference? This world ain't going around, it's addicted inside. You think you're doing so fine, but you're just marking time. I said, lady, it ain't my fault. This mess was around when I got here. Well, she looked me over from head to toe, then run me down with a voice so clear. She said, if I had a mop, I'd just wipe you up. If I had a broom, I'd sweep you out the room. At the oven's door, the sky overhead was billowing red. Money and aisle on the kitchen floor. She said the authentic news wears bright bobbing shoes. We tap dance down the streets as the horns got ready to sound the retreat.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Alvarez, editor of Why to These Rocks, 50 years of poems from the community of writers, and co-director of the writers' workshops at the community of writers. Please join me in thanking Cornelius Eady and the CE Trio for sharing their music with us tonight, bringing us all in from the cold and warming up our virtual room. You will hear more from Cornelius as well as the trio later on. This evening, I speak to you from the foothills of Orange County, where I live, the ancestral and unceded territories of the Tongva and Hashiman. If we were gathered in the valley where many of us first met, home to our conference, we would be acknowledging our debt to the original people of that valley. For thousands of years, the Wasi, now called Washoe, lived there from snowmelt through summer. The Washoe still live in their ancestral lands today. We recognize and honor their history, traditions, and care. Tonight, I ask you to consider the history of the land where you are as well, and what that history means to you and all of us in the present moment. For 50 years, poets and writers have gathered in that valley since the community of writers was first founded in 1969 by novelists Blair Fuller and Oakley Hall. In those early years, poets worked alongside prose writers during the same week in a program directed by Bill Fox. When Galway Cannell became director of the poetry program, he developed a different vision. It is Galway's vision that we celebrate tonight. Poets, Cannell believed, merited their own week and needed to use their time in the valley to generate new work. His generative model requires staff and participants to draft new poems each day. Some staff poets, such as Robert Hass, who succeeded Cannell as director, along with Lucille Clifton, Brenda Hillman, Forrest Gander, Sharon Olds, and C.D. Wright, and many others, returned to the valley year after year. Some, such as Kazim Ali, Patricia Spears-Jones, and Evie Shockley, arrived as participants only to return as teaching staff. The participant poets who have spent a week, or two, or three, or more, include those who have gone on to publish and otherwise contribute to the literary arts in their home communities. Much of that work, first forged in a week shaped around the workshop table and the dinner table, running bases at the famous midweek poetry softball game, or on the nature walks up Shirley Canyon, along the Truckee River and the shores of Lake Tahoe, has made its way into the world. And now some of those poems have been chosen for this anniversary anthology. This evening and this book are made possible by the support of so many, not just the poets you will hear tonight and the ones you will read later on, but by organizations and individuals who recognize that the literary arts are indispensable, including the hardworking board members and support staff of the community of writers who have helped make this book and programs like this happen. So thanks to them, and to Heyday Books and its publisher Steve Wasserman and its visionary founder Malcolm Margolin, who gave this volume the best home possible. Thanks also to the California State Library and the California Center for the Book. And for giving this launch a home this evening, we are so grateful to the Mill Valley Public Library and the Marin Poetry Center. And thanks to all of you for making it here tonight, wherever you are. We are thrilled to welcome you to this pre-publication celebration. If you pre-order the book tonight, you'll be among the first to receive it in April. Today, on the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic, after a year of such loss and many challenges, we so look forward to the day when we can all meet once again in that valley, under those skies and stars, near the waterfalls and close to those trees and those rocks. Now, let me introduce tonight's MC, chair of the Marin Poetry Center, Meryl Natchez, poet, translator, and critic, whose early work with Why to These Rocks was so vital in its creation. Meryl?
Thanks, Lisa. I think my participation in the early work was to leave you a big mess, but I appreciate you thanking me anyway. It was you who really did the hard work of putting the anthology together. I'm just really thrilled to be part of this all-star event. It's sort of like the World Series or the Oscars, except for poets. And one thing about poetry is, like, unlike movie stars or athletes, we poets don't get paid to actually write. They get paid to teach or to speak or to do other things, or maybe have a job completely unrelated to poetry. But we're always trying to steal the time to write from our other obligations. And I think what's so amazing about the community of writers and the poetry workshop is that it's a time where we do nothing but write, write, write. And I will never forget going on my first day at the community of workshop and meeting Galway Cannell for the first time, in which he said we were going to write a poem that night and turn it in by 8 the next morning, and then do that every day for a week. And I can't tell you the amount of terror and exhilaration that that speech provided. His vision really was so key, so foundational to the workshop. And Bob and Sharon and Brenda have really anchored the workshop for the years to come, along with all the other poets who are here tonight and not here tonight. And I especially am thinking of Lucille Clifton and C.D. Wright. Lucille's little mantra, the House of Poetry has many rooms, rings in my head all the time. And I think in this book, you're going to find many, many rooms of poetry. And it's going to be exciting for me. These just arrived this afternoon. It's going to be exciting for me to read, and I think it will be exciting for you too. And I hope it can show you some of the magic, the really indescribable magic that comes from that workshop. I'm introducing Brenda Hillman. Everybody's bios are available to you from the link in the chat. So I'm not going to give a long and illustrious bio because it take way too much time. But I want to tell a very short story about Brenda because for a while, I guess 2 years ago, she and Bob were rigorously attending a vigil on Saturday mornings at the West County Detention Center to protest the local sheriff's complicity with ICE and holding detainees there. And I went a few times with them. And one time we were ready to go. It had been a very drizzly morning. And where's Brenda? She's not at the car. Where's Brenda? Oh, Brenda is moving an earthworm from a puddle in the parking lot over to the grass. And I have to say that that level of kindness and caring is also distributed and welcomed by all the poets that she teaches. Thank you, Brenda, for everything.
Thank you so much, Meryl. And thank you for being such a great participant and maitre d' tonight. I have so much, my heart is so full tonight, and I want to thank, of course, Lisa and Brett, and all the staff and all the elves and all the staff poets and all the participants of all time, and those who are not with us anymore who have participated and helped. And I was first up in the Valley in 1976 with my first husband, when Charles Wright and Mark Strand had started it, the poetry part of it. And it was meeting under a tent where there were about 60 of us under a tent, all sort of shouting out pieces of old poems. So that was my first experience. So in 2026, it'll be my 50-year anniversary. And I wanted to come up with some clever anecdote, but the thing that came to mind for anecdotes, One was on a nature walk when David Lucas held up his iPhone with the sound of a tanager, and a tanager appeared. And that was such a quintessential moment where he did that. Those walks are so amazing. And then another moment that I was remembering was a marmot coming out, coming right in front of our window at the lodge, and he looked as if he was in the shape of an E, and it gave me a poem. So the poem I'm going to read, I'm going to read my poem that's in the anthology, and C.D. Wright's poem that are in the anthology. And I was participating in anti-war work in 2008, and going to DC a lot. And I didn't know how to access that material. And every time I'm stuck in some way, and I get to the valley, something happens that gets me unstuck. Somebody said something at dinner, and it gave me an idea for how to hear a different way, into a sort of, I wasn't writing narratively at the time, but this poem came forth. It's called In a Senate Armed Services Hearing. From my position as a woman, I could see the back of the general's head, the prickly, intimate hairs behind his ears, the visible, rimless justice raining down from the eagle on the national seal, the eagle's claw-held pack of arrows and its friends. A fly was making its for sure maybe algebra cloud in the Senate chamber. It fell to us to see how senators reshuffled papers, the pity of the staples, to sense when someone coughed after the about-to-be czar general said, I don't foresee a long roll for our troops. There was a rose vibration in the rug. From its position on the table, the fly could then foresee the soon-to-be smashed goddess as in Babylon. More perception began to be. Filaments rose from the carpet as the general spoke. The senators were stuck. What were they thinking, sitting there, as dutiful as lunch patrols in junior high? From my position as the fly, I could foresee, as letters issued from the mouths like, General, I'd be interested to know. Some of the letters regretted that. Fibers in the carpet crouched. From the floor arose the sense the goddess Ishtar had come down to bring her astral light with a day-wrinkled plan. From my position as a thought, I thought she might. She might come in to rain her tears on Senator Bayh and Senator Clinton, on Senator Warner in his papa tie and Senator Levin, on Senator Reid and Senator Hill, rain tears into their water glasses. Ishtar from Babylon they had not met before they smashed her country, now or never. Then someone, Clinton I think it was, but it might have been Bayh, asked whether this confirmation will give breathing space for the new general to unoccupy. How do the dead breathe, Senator, from my position as a fly? And I forget who asked what isn't even in the same syntax of this language I'm trying to make no progress in, asked how the army would unoccupy, by north or south. A voice beside my insect ear said these senators all have their lives, kids with stuff to do, folks with cancer, some secret shame in a quotidian, the thing in front always producing panic, just like yours, the voice went, just like your life. I tried to think if this was true, but was too weak from flying above this notebook to pity them. From my position as a molecule, I could foresee 12 Senate water glasses. Each bubble had an azure rim. The ovals on the senators' heads were just like them. The breath they used when saying A for American interests made the A stand still. It had a sunset clause. They tried to say safety, but the S withdrew. The S went underground, would not be redeployed, refused to spell, till all the letters stopped in astral light, in dark love for their human ones. And I wanted to thank Heyday Books and Lisa and everyone who worked so hard on this anthology, and Meryl's hard work as well, and really unbelievably wonderful experience to be in the presence of the writers in this anthology. This is the great C.D. Wright. Obscurity and isolation. The left hand rests on the paper. The hand has entered the frame just above the elbow to reveal a half-rolled sleeve. The other hand is in its service. It holds a foggy glass up to a standing lamp. Motel furniture, motel paneling. From the outside, what light slips through the blind is gray, blue-gray. The phone rings. The hand, conditioned to pick up, hesitates, withdraws before the ringing finally breaks off. And now, wonderful and amazing Sharon Olds.
Can you hear me now? Thank you, love. So touching to be here, and I'm so grateful for having been able to be a part of this community and to see the faces of so many friends. I am speaking from the land of the Wappinger tribe in what is now New York State, between the Hudson River and the Connecticut River down to Manhattan. The Wappinger is an Algonquin speaking tribe. And I'm always thinking when I'm in the valley of the community of writers, or when I'm here, of how places get named, and that the First Nation people name things for themselves, not for a person who has looked at them. So the Hudson is the Shatamuk, water two ways, the estuary of Manhattan, down by the ocean. Oh my, oh my. Hello, my darlings. I get to start with a poem of Galway's, with part of this poem called Exeunt the Frogs. So I looked up exeunt to be sure that it was the direction in Shakespeare, meaning they leave the stage, whoever was on exits. Exeunt the frogs. A frog smiles. I'm so excited, the pages are just trying to fly right to each one of you. A frog smiles until its time is up. Its mouth opens like the top of a Steinway. Its bass voice rivals that instrument in volume and power. Many creatures, including us, when long bottled up, like to let go. At evening, the lecking of a bullfrog releases the repressed feelings of the day. Before long, we could be deprived of their voices, which have sung us Earth's vespers continuously from soon after our idea of the beginning. Sorrow booms in a frog's resonating chambers, stirring alarm in the bugs, slugs, and woodlice who wait with diminished hope in its digesting chamber. Oh, this poem is so excited also. Oh, I have heard of frogs dying off for a long time, perhaps since my childhood. Born into a brew of cadmium and mercury, they hop up and flee across a land of selenium and arsenic under cover of their fixed smiles, with floppy feet and an extra or missing toe on endocrine disruptors. Why else but that they know we are moving toward night? During each hop, they scan for evidence. It is true. Exeunt frogs, exit omnes. Galway Canal. So when I think of being there, I just am filled with feeling and gratitude. And one thing I remember is that during 30 years of going there, I learned how to hit a perfect line drive into the shortstop's glove, just like a wind-up toy. And the feeling of connection was so much stronger than the realization that there was another out for me. How wonderful that we were able to swim together and look for flowers together. And I think this poem of mine that's in the book talks about one of my unofficial jobs. Which I gave myself out of love, to stand beside Lucille at the beach. And if an insect came near her, to tempt it to walk on me and to carry it away from our beloved Lucille. Song Before Dawn. In the dark, not the full dark, woken by the cold, pulling the covers up around my mouth, making a small cavern of warmth, of living breath, sensing the over-under of my sleep-loosened braids, all my arms and legs tangled around each other. I used to lie on this mountain, and Galway and Lucille were dreaming nearby. I used to put on layers and layers by touch, and despite my fear of being outdoors in the night, as if I were not a person but an occasion for violence, I would go outside, the sky black, as if there had been a God, it might have petted me on the head, like Galway in his scrupulous mercy toward me, like my chivalry toward him, and our confiding in each other like a child in the woods confiding without language in the needles and cones. In the dark, in the dusk before first light, above the granite domes, which look from here like peaks, but are the knees and hip bone crests and clavicles, jaws, occipital arches under the mountains, fontanelles. The stars are still just visible, and in the binoculars, clear and sharp. But despite holding the heavy lenses, leaning the adventure of life when you have shaking hands, leaning against the stucco frame. My tremor shows each star swiftly whirling in a white gold ring like Saturn's in one direction, then swirling, then the other, then an hourglass, a spiral, a bed spring, the stars sparkler tracing my shaking. And now, in the quietest moment, the voice it took the earth millions of years to speak, the vireo before first light. When my hands were steady, I would stand at Lucille's shoulder at the lake and softly pluck insects, 9-spotted lady beetle, giant crane fly, green darner, black snow mosquito off her shoulder, nape, white cap, and blow them out over the glacier blue water toward the place where we're going, one by one, two by two, sometimes many at a time, someday all together, as if reunited. And now it's my very great pleasure to introduce someone from whom I have learned so much about writing and about family, and writing about family, and learning how much we learn from those who are younger than we are. So it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Greg Pardlo.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks so much. It's what an incredible honor. As Brenda said earlier, you know, my heart is full. Galway and Sharon were my teachers. I did my MFA at NYU. They were my combined alma mater. And Cornelius, I studied with Cornelius back in the 90s, Cave Canem. Brenda chose my first book for the Hahnemann Prize. So I am among family, and it's such an honor to join this community. And I got the great pleasure of bringing my family, as Sharon is noting. So after workshop, I would go back to the room and meet them, and we'd have a quick meal, and I'd start working on my poem, and they would be getting ready to go off and ski for the afternoon. So they're not welcome back anymore, but I had some good memories from their joining me. Hopefully they'll be back. They may. We'll see. I'm going to start with a family poem. This is called Metaphor. Metaphor. It means to transfer or carry, as a man might carry his namesake in his arms or on his shoulders, cheering, "We bad, we bad," as my father did when he saw himself in me. As I came of age, however, I thought my father was, in the sense that means to hamper or impede, an embarrassment, which is, as all language is, essentially a metaphor. I.A. Richards says a metaphor consists of a tenor and a vehicle. My father would point out that he's using a metaphor to define metaphors, a literalization, like when Richards himself asks if a wooden leg is a metaphor for a wooden leg. My dad, Gregory Pardlo Sr., before he died, lost his leg to diabetes. Even though he himself would be the only person to see it, he insisted that the prosthesis match his skin tone. This is the same guy who gave me a Hot Wheels car for Christmas. A joke, see. He promised me a car when I turned 16. It shimmers on my desk now, a kitschy muse with shark's teeth decals behind the wheel wells. Before he died, I told him I would have preferred a Matchbox car packaged in an actual matchbox, literalizing the figurative commingling of tenor and vehicle, more metonym than metaphor, a pedigree, in other words. He told me to get the stick out of my ass. Greg Pardlo is dead. Long live Greg Pardlo. Thank you. And now I get the great pleasure of reading another dear friend, Cleopatra Mathis, her poem, After Persephone. After Persephone. Heaven got sweeter. Its paperweight curve, star crazy at its purple center. She found a god, a weapon in the works, something I hadn't noticed in the field, fought out of the layers and took her. I tore away the land's every color, withered the smallest grasses. Every heartbeat went blank. I dismantled the ticking. They only say what I took, not what I gave. Roots and strong light, glory in the single shoot, green currency of the just born. From the irredeemable, the buried, this is how a self gets made. Remember, that darkness contained the seed, sealed in the swollen red globe. Hell had to pay. Oof. Cleopatra Mathis. And now, another dear friend. We don't get to hang out as much as I would like. Yeah. But when we do see each other, it's always quality time. And I feel this weight just drop whenever I see. I just want to run and give him a big hug. Forrest Gander, what a what a wonderful human being. Thank you, Forrest Gander.
Thank you, Greg. Watching those photographs that preceded our speaking, and seeing that photograph of everyone in the dark yellow light of the ski lodge where we go the last night, I felt such a whelming of feeling and connection to the people that I've met there, and to the often really brilliant quality of writing. And it was with the community of writers where I was the year after CD died. And at that time, I was, as Brenda says, trying to make no progress. I wasn't interested in much of anything, and I hadn't been writing at all and had no interest in writing. But there, among that company, I was forced to write, like everyone is, in what Meryl talked about, that terror and exhilaration. And the poems for Be With, the major poems for Be With, all sort of broke loose out of me there. And I'll not forget that either. I can't read from that book anymore, though. It's too painful for me. So I'm going to read a short poem from a new book called Twice Alive. And the poem is called Immigrant Sea. Aroused by her inaccessibility, he aches for more of her life to live inside him. Watching the breakers, standing so close he can feel heat coming off her wet scalp. What is his relation to this person before him, so familiar and foreign? The way he searches out her face, he searches out himself. Gusts thrash crests of swell, spring grasses twirl circles in the sand where they stand without speaking. She wants him to know it's all charged, even grass, positive, pollen, negative. So when grass waves, it sweeps the air for pollen. He feels electricity all around, as though the wild drama of the coming storm were already aware of them, foreigners on this shore. Little sapphire blue flowers speckle the dunes. He wonders if he has let himself flatten out into a depthless sheet like escalator stairs, whether in the end he'll disappear underground without the smallest lurch of resistance. But when her lavish face turns toward him, beaming, the corners of her eyes wind wet, he yields to that excess. He reappears to himself. And then I'll read a poem by a writer I met the last time that I was with the community of writers. His name is Xiangyang Fang, and this poem is called Rider's Song. It is now time, said the crooked man, to know that after your meaningless meandering to make meaning, it is time to hold what was not told, but told regardless by a real toad in this imaginary cold, that you, young man, will die before you get to Cordoba, meaning you, with your black pony, red moon, never will get to Cordoba, let alone the dark tower, where a girl, long hair, chestnut, whose name is also Cordoba, everything in Cordoba is called Cordoba, is calling you, and you who've come such a long way do not have a name, ache to be called by her, so that you become real as that toad, except that the tower is not, and the girl, no more real than unreal, is nevertheless calling you. But child, knowing you are not Roland the child, but a proletariat's son in a capitalist world, are you sure to go on this meaningless road to make yourself a toad, my poor rider, who mistakes his quill for a dagger, who takes water as his mother, death by watercress, by the siren's music, which is only Odysseus's speculation, and you who sing to repeat a world unworthy to be repeated, and yet for whom dauntless the slug horn to your lips you set and blow, though really, really you know, and know it well. Cordoba, Cordoba is perhaps itself aware that it is called something else. Xiangyang Feng. Oh, and now I get to introduce the electrically innovative and fabulous Evie Shockley.
Greetings, everyone. It is a true pleasure to be able to participate in this reading and join in the celebration of Why to These Rocks, the amazing anthology that is on its way into the world, as well as 50 years of the community of writers. I feel that the poetry workshop has been one of the blessings of my poetry life. From the first time I was able to participate through the several times over the years that I've been fortunate to return. And I just want to thank everyone who has made that community possible, participated in it, and helped it to grow, not least of all, our dear, dear Brett. So this poem was written towards the end of the week one year when, as we all know, you have begun to feel like you've hit the bottom of the well. But there's the picnic, there's the wildflower walk, there is softball, there is swimming for some or wading for others. And there are the drives to and from the beach. And I remember having a conversation with Brenda, who I had caught a ride back with and a few others that year that sowed some of the kernels that became this poem either later that night or the next night, but before the end of the week. And this is my contribution to the anthology. It's called Improperty Behavior. Racial profiling, the idea that there's no legitimate reason for driving while Black. Take Sean Bell. He got 50 bullets pumped into his car for driving while Black. Home ownership is also improper behavior. In Cambridge and beyond, ask Henry Louis Gates, arrested in his own home for thriving while Black. Seemed like the Obama's celebratory fist bump might derail his campaign. Now they know they should avoid things like high-fiving while Black. Inner city hoops are, of course, appropriate, unlike swimming in the suburbs. The Creative Steps Day Camp kids were booted from a pool for diving while Black. Even b-ball can fall out of bounds if the finals pitched you against a whiter team. The Rutgers women's players were slammed on air for striving while Black. Post-Katrina New Orleans is open to anyone with the money to rebuild, except the Ninth Ward, which they're discouraged from reviving while Black. It's all about belonging. Even now, who belongs where is often based on who belonged to whom. I sometimes wonder how I get away with living while Black. And with that, I would like to introduce the next poet, Cornelius Eady. Thanks.
Go. Wow. Evie. What an amazing evening. I'm so happy to be part of this. Listening to everyone, I'm sort of reminded about how co-mingled my life has been with Squaw Valley, right? It's most people think that writing is this isolated thing. You go off to some garret, and disappear, and then beautiful things happen. But really, I think the best of us write because our lives are commingled with others, and I think that's the energy or the engine where a lot of these things come out. And I was thinking, listening to all these writers, just how commingled my life has been with Squaw Valley. I mean. I was invited to teach at Squaw Valley. I got a phone call from Galway inviting me to come and read, which I couldn't believe. I thought it was, my first impression was that it was some gag. Someone had put somebody up to talk by Galway Canal and invite me to come and teach there. Second part was that after I realized it was legitimate, that I got a phone call from Sharon, and we met at the now defunct Cornelia Street Cafe to talk. And Sharon gave me some knowledge to help me finish my book, You Don't Miss Your Water. She doesn't remember it, but I remember it. And it was very helpful at that time. I ended up teaching it at that. And it also reminded me of when my first encounter with Galway Canal was actually when I was a baby poet in my hometown of Rochester, New York. And my first workshop in the world, we were reading The Bear, by Galway. And how we read it was that we passed it among ourselves. We each read a few stanzas and then passed it to the other one. It was like contraband, right? And so this really just really this incredible thing. Oh my God, he's cutting the bear open. Now he's gonna go into the bear. Oh my God. It was a mind-blowing experience about what a poem could be. And as a baby poet, it never crossed my mind that I would ever be in a situation where I not only would meet Galway Canal, but I would actually be teaching with Galway Canal, but also be at Squaw Valley with Galway Canal. And Lisa, you reminded me of something of the interconnection between Cave-Canem and Squaw Valley, right? And the basic DNA of Cave-Canem, which is the idea of writing a new piece of writing every day comes out of Galway's head. We adapted that when we started Copy Conum. So again, all this is just flooding me as I'm going here, as we're going along here, and it's such a pleasure to see everyone. It's a pleasure and also an ache, right? Because Zoom can only go so far. Forrest is Forrest is great to see you. Really, I haven't seen you in so long, and it's like, oh my God, there you are, right? Right? It's like, oh, but it's great to see everyone. And Sharon, oh God, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read 2 poems. I was told just to read one and do a memory thing, but I'm going to read 2 things because of Evie. Blame Evie. Also, I'm a geezer now. I'm 67 years old, so now I get to do whatever I want. But it's one of those things where basically I'm going to read the poem that's in the anthology, if I can find it. I thought I had it up. Hold on. I do. And the great thing about the poem is that it's about the softball game, and it is really. It's one of those poems where I had written it and totally forgotten it. It was one of those days I simply just wrote the poem and got it ready for the next day's workshop, and I have totally forgotten about it for decades. And it's a nice surprise. Time out. We didn't grow up to be team players. The wordy ones, the shy ones, the smart-ass ones, the ones who burned alone or in small groups, who had this tick or faraway look, or dreamed while wide awake. Too fat, too thin, too dark or poor, or aware of our bodies, too restless or lazy or uncoordinated. In a word, doomed. So here we are on a baseball field in sunny July in Tahoe City, California, in the middle of a week of writing. Back at Squaw Valley, our poems sleep for a day. Our memories and longings and angers, our struggle with how to put it down, get it right, our nagging with the truth set gently aside. Tell me a grander beauty than a game. The heat, the dust, the slow rolling of hours, our bodies learning the swing, or remembering the last time our muscles spoke in that combination. Teamed up, anxious as raw recruits. Who counts the swings? How many outs? Who knows the score? Who tracks the innings? And we swing, we poets, and we miss, and we drop. Oh, perfect summer day when no one loses. And this is the poem that I also go back to this idea of how my life's been commingled with Squaw Valley. I wrote my 4th book, You Don't Miss Your Water. Now, what a lot of people don't, they're prose poems, and what a lot of people don't understand or realize is that there's 21 poems in that book, and 1/3 of that book was written the week I was teaching at Squaw Valley. 7 of those poems, that was the week I was teaching at Squaw Valley. All of those poems, the last 7 poems, that's where I wrote them. So there's that. The other thing is, this poem I'm about to read for Emmett Till was also part of what I wrote at Squaw Valley. It was because I was waiting for my poem I was trying to write my poem for the day. And a friend of mine from Pennsylvania, who teaches Pennsylvania, used to teach in Pennsylvania at Bucknell, calls me up and sends me an email and says this story about Emmett Till, his casket. And you got to write this. This is your poem. You got to write this. It'll make a great poem. And of course, when you get in those situations when people tell you there's a great poem that you should write, this is the hazard of being a poet. It's like being a doctor. Everyone's got an ache. Oh, doctor, I got this little ache. So I was trying to sort of just fend my friend off. Then I read the story, and I realized she was right. And that was my poem for the day that I wrote at school. Emmett Till's Glass Top Casket. By the time they cracked me open again, topside, abandoned in a tool shed, I had become another kind of mess. Not many people connect possums with Chicago, but this is where the city ends after all, and I float still after the footfalls fade and the roots bloom around us. The fact was, everything that worked for my young man worked for my new tenants. The fact was, he had been gone for years. They lifted him from my embrace, and I was empty, ready. That's how the possums found me, friend. Dry docked, a tattered mercy hall. Once I held a boy who didn't look like a boy. When they finally remembered, they peeked through my clear top. Then their wild surprise. I also hope you notice that in the background here, there's Lucille. And I get the incredible pleasure of introducing Bob Haas. Bob? All right, you're going to give me some airtime. I'll keep talking if you want. I'm trying to keep it short. But one thing I would love to say about Bob is this is exactly it. From my point of view, the thing about transition in an organization is that when it happens and it's right, everybody knows it. Everyone knows it. Everyone understands that the change has to happen and the change is accepted because the right person at the right moment is there. And there's no discussion about it. There's no arguing about it. There's no boss. It's just basically the right person at the right time shows up and you go for it. And that's what was my feeling when Bob took the reins. So, Bob Haas.
Thank you, Cornelius. So that's Lucille over your shoulder like a guardian angel. So let's go straight to her. She's one of the beloved spirits who is going to hover over this community forever, as Galway is in CD. This is in 1844, explorers John Fremont and Kit Carson discovered Lake Tahoe. Quotation from a guidebook. In 1841, Washoe children swam like otters in the lake. Their mothers rinsed red beans. In 1842, Washoe warriors began to dream dried bones and hollow reeds. They woke clutching their shields. In 1843, Washoe elders began to speak of grass hunched in fear and thunder sticks over the mountain. In 1844, Fremont and Carson, and that's how it ends. Here's a couple of other of her Sierra poems. This is Highway 89 toward Tahoe. It's her great short lines. A congregation of red rocks sits at attention, watching the water, the trees among them. Rustle, hosanna, hosanna. Something stalls the rental car. Something moves us. Something moves us. Something in the river. Christ rowing for our lives. That's Lucille. And this haiku is Lucille. Over the mountain and under the stars, it is one hell of a ride. So I need to thank all of you for this wonderful evening, and to thank Steve Wasserman and the staff at Heyday Books for the anthology, for their work on it, and thank Lisa Alvarez for really imagining the shape of it into being, and thank Brett Hall Jones for making, and Louis Jones for making this evening possible. Yeah, my experience of Squaw Valley is mostly, and of the community of writers, is mostly bliss and terror. To get up in the morning and write, and getting to get up in the morning in this amazing collection of people. So thank you all. And this is a Squaw Valley poem, and it's called The Seventh Night. And for people who are listening, so you're writing a poem every day for 7 days. And you get up in the morning and you go, and everybody reads their new poem to each other, and there isn't too much time to talk about it a lot. And then you go off and write another one. You have the afternoon and the evening, and then the next day another one, and the next day another one. And then there's the seventh day, and you've finally done it. And there's this is called The Seventh Night. It was the seventh night, and he walked out to look at stars, chill in the air, sharp, not of summer. And he wondered if the geese on the lake felt it and grew restless, and if that was why, in the later afternoon, they had gathered in the bay's mouth and flown abruptly back and forth on the easy, swift veering of their wings. It was high summer, and he was thinking of autumn under a shadowy tall pine, and of geese overhead on cold mornings and high clouds drifting. He regarded the stars in the cold dark. They were a long way off, and he decided, watching them blink, that compared the distance between him and them, his outside looking in feeling was dancing cheek to cheek. And he noticed then that she was there, a shadow between parked cars, looking out across the valley where the half moon poured thin light down the pine ridge. She started when he approached her, and then recognized him and smiled and said, "Hi, Nightlight." And he said, "Hi, Dreamer." And she said, "Hi, Moonshine." And he said, "Hi, Mortal Splendor." And she said, "That's good." Thought for a while, scent of sage or yerba buena, and singing in the house. She took a new tack and said, "My father is a sad chair, and I am the blind thumb's yearning." He said, "Who threw the jade swan in the chicken soup?" Some of the others were coming out of the house, saying goodbye, hugging each other. She said, "The lion of grief paws what meat he is given." Cars starting up, one of the stagehands starting to uproot a pine. He said, "Rifling the purse of possible regrets." She said, "Staggering tarts, a narcoleptic moon." Most of the others were gone. A few gathered to listen. The stagehands were lugging off the understory plants. Others were rolling up the mountain. It was clear that though polite, they were impatient. He said, "Goodbye, last thing." She said, "So long, apocalypse." Somebody else said, "Time," but she said, "The last boat left Hania in late afternoon." He said, "Goodbye, Moscow, nights like sable, mornings like the word persimmon." She said, "Days, mailman drinks from a black well of reheated coffee in a cafe called Mom's on the outskirts of Durango." And he said, "That's good." And one of the stagehands snubbed his cigarette and said, "Okay, with the last of you folks to leave, please, if you can remember it, just turn out the stars," which they did. And the white light everywhere in that silence was a sheet of white paper. Thank you guys all. Thank you for this splendid evening. And good night, Lucille. Good night, Galway. Good night, CD.
Well, I'm supposed to say some sort of thing to close this event, but I can't think of anything better than the seventh night. So I think that that really should be our ending. Everything has been said. It's wonderful just to see all your faces, to hear your work. And I think we're going to get to hear a little more of Cornelius. And please look in the chat for more information about the book and where to buy it. I think there's going to be an interview of Bob and Sharon and Brenda that I originally did for the book, but I think it's going to be in the Ziziva blog. So look for that and buy the book, apply to the workshop. There's nothing better in this world.
And
Thank you.
thanks, Mill Valley Public Library.
Yes.
And Franklin Walther, the inimitable.
Let there be new flowering in the fields. Let the fields turn yellow for the men. Let the men keep tender through the time. Let the time be rested from the war. Let the war be won. Let love be at the end. Let there be new flowering in the fields. Let the fields turn mellow for the men. Let the men keep tender through the time. Let the time be rested from the war. Let the war be won. Let love be at the end. Let love be at the end. Let love be at the end.
So I will say some final acknowledgements. A huge thank you to Brett Hall Jones, who really does have us in her care. To Angie Brenner, the city librarian, who never says no to a wonderful event like this and is so supportive of all the events that we ask them to host, unstinting with her resources. Franklin Walther, who does the tech behind the scenes and makes it all possible in that way. All the Hall family, all the poets who make this event possible, and everyone who worked on the anthology, the screeners, the readers, and Lisa, the editor. Thank you all for making this possible and for this wonderful evening. And if I've left anybody out, somebody should just speak up because I didn't write this down. Take care, everyone.
We want to hear more Cornelius.
Actually, more Lucille, who got the last word, as it should be. Bye, folks.